Close your eyes gently and imagine for a moment that you're walking through the dusty, mysterious streets of the Middle Ages. The air is mixed with a faint smell of manure and smoke, and the muffled sound of a church bell can be heard in the distance. So, were those romantic loves and epic passions you see in movies real? Or was the understanding of intimacy and love in that era much different, much more complex than we imagine? Tonight, I will tell you the truths whispered by church walls, lived behind closed doors by villagers, and hidden beneath the armor of knights. In an age when sexuality was a taboo and marriage was a contract, how did people truly love? I am taking you on a peaceful journey into the intimate secrets of the Middle Ages. Relax and let yourself be carried away by the calm flow of the past. In the Middle Ages, love rarely began with a personal choice. Especially for nobles, marriage was often a business arrangement. Picture elaborate cloaks and towering castles. Within their thick stone walls, young women and men often had their destinies sealed before seeing each other. Marriages united lands, ended feuds, strengthened alliances, or simply perpetuated family names. Marriage was the most crucial move in this strategic game. Imagine you are a young woman, barely in your teens, told you'll marry a distant baron, a man your father's age or older. You sit up in bed, wondering if you're dreaming. No, this is real. Your dowry silken fabrics, jewels, horses, even land with its peasants a testament to your family's wealth. As you toss and turn that night, you contemplate a life planned from start to finish, spent with a stranger. On your wedding day, you inhale the cold, damp air of the cathedral. Hymns echo, feeling like a weight. Each jewel on your gown adds to the burden. Everyone round you celebrates, yet you feel utterly alone. Your hand rests in the calloused hand of an elderly stranger. Your duty is clear, to bear an heir, love. In such marriages, it was a rare flower, an unexpected gift, never a starting point. In this noble world, courtly love emerged. This was an idealized admiration felt by a typically married knight for an equally married, unattainable lady. More spiritual than physical, the knight would write poems for her, bear her colors, and prove his loyalty. However, this love rarely translated to physical intimacy. An extramarital physical relationship would eternally tarnish their reputations and face the church's harsh judgment. These secret loves, whispered through castle corridors, were often played out like a dangerous game within strict societal rules. Imagine you are that lady. A knight kneels, his gaze adoring. He whispers his poems. Your heart quickens, but rules and the church's watchful I warn you. This admiration is your private sanctuary, but it must never see the light of day. For many noble women, these platonic loves fill the emptiness of their marriages, the only solace in a life where they had no choices. As you ponder this silent truth, you realize how little we know of their inner worlds. Their whispers, hidden glances, and secret desires weren't recorded in official histories. Yet, these stories show they felt, longed, and struggled just like us. Now, with these thoughts, take one more step towards the ancient silence of the Middle Ages, towards the peace before sleep. While noble marriages revolved round politics and land, peasant homes held a different reality. Here, the primary factor was survival. To work the land, tend animals and feed the family. Extra hands and a strong marital union were essential. Inside a peasant's home, luxuries were absent. Rough tables, stools, a few beds, and a perpetually burning hearth provided all light. This dimness, in its own way, silently witnessed intimacy. Working side by side in the fields, their backs bronzed, hands marked by earth and cold, a deep bond often formed. This bond, less idealized than courtly love, was a product of reality and shared struggle. Tired bodies, after their evening meal, huddled by the hearth. Perhaps they didn't speak much, but their silence reflected deep respect and shared fate. A farmer gently rubbing his wife's weary back, or, in their beds, like a small island isolated from the world, they'd embrace each other with deep affection and understanding, forming their language of love. Peasants often married early, typically after acquiring savings, a small plot, or a few animals, a decision based on suitability and practicality. A simple public ceremony, a short church prayer, a small feast, but the true celebration was the deep sense of security and stability a shared life would bring. Imagine Agnes, a young peasant woman. You wake before dawn, hands trembling as you milk cows. All day, you work alongside your husband Thomas in the fields. In the evening, back in your hut, your knees ache. After eating and putting children to bed, you sit side by side in the hut, lit by the last embers. Thomas's calloused hand on your weary one seemed to erase the day's hardships. Their silence reflected deep respect and shared destiny. Their intimacy came not from romantic poems, but from the touch of working hands, tied shoulders, and shared hopes. It was different from modern love, yet held its own raw sincerity and strength. Physical intimacy was natural for peasants. Despite strict church doctrines, their lives were simpler. In this world of scarcity, human warmth and physical contact were sources of comfort and renewal. Children helped early, so parents' intimate moments found a natural place in crowded homes. Private space wasn't distinct, but shared hardships and mutual needs strengthened their bond. Their intimacy was a survival ritual, a collective response to harsh conditions. This intimacy stemmed more from basic human needs than church teachings. Now, with these thoughts, visualize the dimness of those medieval village homes and the silent loves that echoed within them. Calm yourself and surrender to these tranquil images. Listen to the wind. Hear the fireplace crackle. In the Middle Ages, like every aspect of life, sexuality and intimacy were under the powerful eye of the Church. The Church was an absolute authority that shaped lives, setting prohibitions and divining sins. Sexuality was generally accepted only for procreation. Any other sexual relationship was condemned as sin and brought severe consequences. Imagine a priest's sermon. Candlelight flickers. Incense hangs heavy. The priest's voice describes hellfire for sexual sins, every kiss, touch. Even thought outside marriage was a sin, even in marriage. Specific rules applied only for procreation on certain days, in certain positions. These rules often clashed with human desires, leading to deep internal conflict. Consider a young couple in your village, secretly meeting. Their hearts pound with passion and fear. What they've done is a great sin. What if they're discovered? Shame, ostracization, public punishment. This fear drove many into secret relationships. Bedrooms became sanctuaries, hidden from the church, harboring their own little secrets. The church, while holding marriage sacred, allowed almost no divorce. Once married, the bond was severed only by death. This caused great despair for those in unhappy or abusive marriages. A woman couldn't leave her husband through legal or religious means. Even in her own home, she had no say over her body or desires. Chastity and virginity were essential for clergy. Their lives were dedicated to God, free from worldly pleasures. But human nature often defied rules. Within monasteries and churches, human stories, secret loves, and whispered scandals occur a testament to the church's contradiction between its rules and human nature. People of this era constantly lived between sinfulness and salvation. Sexuality, while fundamental for existence, was also seen as a spiritual danger. This contradiction left lasting marks. Their bedrooms weren't just for sleep, but places where desires, fears, and secret hopes echoed in whispers. Now, with these thoughts, take one more step towards the ancient silence of the Middle Ages, towards the peace of those last moments before sleep. Listen to the silence round you. Hear only your own breathing and heartbeat. Gently close your eyes and surrender yourself to this. Serene flow, as whispers of medieval marriages and courtly loves fade into the quiet, we journey deeper into the intimate, often hidden aspects of medieval life, the church. With its towering cathedrals and stern doctrines, cast a long, pervasive shadow over every aspect of existence, defining what was righteous and what was sin. Its authority reached into every corner of human experience, dictating public morality and private thoughts. Yet, beneath this rigid facade, human desires persisted, an undeniable current flowing beneath the surface, finding expression in ways both surprising and clandestine. Tonight, we gently pull back the veil on the forbidden pleasures and secret desires that pulsed beneath the Middle Ages. Relax, breathing softly, as we patiently uncover these fascinating truths. The Church's stance on sex was clear, unyielding. Repeatedly emphasized, its primary purpose was solely procreation. Any act not aimed at creating new life was a grave sin, a transgression against divine will. This rigid interpretation meant that even within marriage, strict rules dictated when and how couples could engage in physical intimacy. Imagine the sheer number of days declared off-limits, all Sundays, countless fasting days, major religious holidays, Lent, Advent, and even specific periods following childbirth. If a child was conceived on a forbidden day, or in a sinful manner, it was widely believed that such a child might be born with deformities, chronic ailments, or possess a malevolent spirit. Picture yourself, a young married woman, perhaps named Ella, lying next to your husband on a simple, rustic straw mattress. The room is cloaked in profound darkness, pierced by a thin sliver of moonlight. You hear your husband stir. Yet, it's a forbidden day, and the priest's warnings about hell echo chillingly in your mind. The natural warmth and affection you feel are immediately dampened by a profound, paralyzing fear. You instinctively turn away, pulling the course. Will blanket higher. The invisible weight of 1,000 unspoken rules presses down on your very soul. This was the silent, internal conflict countless individuals face daily, the powerful pull of human nature against the absolute, and yielding power of divine decree, enforced by a vigilant church. Beyond the when, the church also heavily policed the how of intimacy. Only the missionary position was deemed natural, modest, and God-approved, allowing for direct procreation and symbolizing man's proper order over woman. All other positions were vehemently condemned as unnatural, beastly, or sodomitical, associated purely with lust. Confessors routinely questioned parishioners in excruciating detail about their sexual practices, probing for specifics that would expose sinful deviations. The pressure to conform was immense, leading many to live lives shrouded in outward piety and hidden struggle, confessing secret sins in hushed tones to their priests, despite these intense, all-encompassing prohibitions. Human nature found ways to express itself. We know from scattered historical records, court documents, penitential handbooks, and even candid private letters that not everyone adhered strictly to the church's doctrines. Prostitution, though officially condemned, often thrived in every major town and city. Homosexuality, while a grave sin punishable by horrific penalties, also had its quiet, hidden existence, sometimes tolerated if kept exceptionally discreet. These were powerful underground currents, unspoken realities that medieval society often chose to violently suppress or conveniently ignore, but which never truly vanished. Let's address a particularly pervasive myth. The chastity belt. You might envision a cruel, intricate iron contraption, complete with heavy locks and keys, fitted onto a woman by her departing husband, perhaps a noble knight heading to crusade. It's an undeniably compelling, almost Gothic image, deeply ingrained in popular culture. But here's the crucial historical truth. There is virtually no credible, widespread historical evidence of chastity belts being commonly used in the Middle Ages. The few existing examples are mostly ceremonial curiosities from much later periods, or outright elaborate forgeries created in the 19th century. The idea primarily comes from Renaissance-era satirical literature and later romanticized fiction, designed to mock rather than reflect genuine medieval practice, the real chastity. Bell to the Middle Ages was far more insidious, pervasive, and effective. It was fear, the constant, gnawing fear of social ostracism and public humiliation if one's transgression became known, the fear of being branded a harlot or a deviant, losing all standing. The fear of eternal damnation and hellfire, preached with terrifying imagery, and for women especially. There was the very real fear of physical violence, brutal punishment, complete abandonment, or even death if discovered engaging in illicit sexual acts or becoming pregnant outside the church's strictures. A woman's reputation was her most valuable asset. Once lost, it was almost impossible to regain. This internal belt, enforced by community, clergy, and the threat of earthly and spiritual punishment, was infinitely more powerful and binding than any piece of cold iron. It was a prison of the mind, inescapable and all-encompassing. Yet, even with these formidable societal and religious restraints, medieval people sought outlets for pleasure, companionship, and emotional release. Prostitution offers a fascinating and profound paradox. While officially condemned, many medieval towns and cities paradoxically had designated areas for brothels. These establishments were often openly, if somewhat discreetly, regulated and taxed by local authorities. This was a pragmatic acknowledgement. by secular powers that, despite deep moral objections, certain human needs for a physical release and companionship persisted and, if not managed, could lead to greater social disorder. Imagine yourself passing through a narrow, winding, cobbled street in a bustling medieval city. Perhaps during late evening, the air is thick with sounds, shouts of merchants, clatter of hooves, distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, and murmur of evening prayers. Smells are a rich tapestry. Market stalls, fresh bread. Horsemen all mingling with wood smoke. Then, subtly, you reach a specific district, perhaps identified by a single red lantern. The atmosphere shifts. Laughter is louder, music more boisterous. Women with painted faces and colorful dresses lean out of windows or stand at doorways. Beckoning, this was the red light district, a designated space where the forbidden was openly, if with quiet understanding, tolerated. For men, these establishments offered a temporary escape from rigid moral codes, a space where physical desires could be indulged without the heavy weight of public sin, or at least a sin pragmatically ignored by secular authorities. Further, women working within these brothels, life was brutal, harsh, and often tragically short. They were typically from the poorest classes, with few other options for survival. Their existence was precarious, marked by disease, violence, and social stigma. Yet, even in this grim reality, there were fleeting moments of human connection, a shared joke, a surprising kindness, or simply the temporary relief of momentary warmth. These women, often outcast, were still an undeniable part of medieval life, fulfilling a role that, despite moral condemnation, was implicitly recognized as an unfortunate, yet necessary, aspect of urban existence, a stark mirror reflecting society's own hidden needs. Beyond the visible brothels, clandestine encounters occurred in countless other shadowed spaces, hidden corners of taverns, back rooms of inns, privacy of rented chambers, or shadowy depths of forests. These secret liaisons carried immense personal and social risk. But for some, the thrill of forbidden passion, or the desperate need for human connection, outweighed the fear of discovery. Superstitious beliefs often intertwined with these affairs. People sought out local witches for love potions, charms, or ancient rituals believed to attract a desired lover, ensure fertility, or protect illicit affairs. The belief in magic offered a glimmer of control in a world governed by rigid rules. As you reflect on these hidden, often contradictory, aspects of medieval sexuality, consider the complex, multifaceted tapestry of human experience. The strict moral codes and public pronouncements of the Church stood in stark and often tragic contrast to the persistent, undeniable currents of human desire and the often pragmatic, messy realities of daily life. It is a powerful reminder that even in the most rigid societies, people always find ways to navigate, to subtly resist, and to express their deepest, most fundamental needs for intimacy, pleasure, and connection in ways both overt and profoundly secret. Allow these thoughts to settle gently in your mind. The secrets of the past are like the soft, ancient hum of the wind through untouched forests, always present, even when unseen. Breathe deeply, letting go of any remaining tension. The Middle Ages, with all its intricacies and contradictions, and its deeply human stories, is now calmly drifting into the quiet, welcoming corners of your consciousness. As the whispers of hidden desires settle, let's drift to the clatter of armor, and the thundering hoofs of the medieval battlefield. The Age of Knights was one of brutal warfare, unwavering loyalty, and a code of honor that shaped every aspect of life. Yet, even amidst the grim realities of combat and the strict demands of chivalry, human hearts beat with passion, seeking connection, love, and intimacy. Tonight, we'll explore the complex world of knights, their battles, their relationships with women, a fascinating dance of courage and tenderness. Close your eyes, breathe gently, and let the sounds of steel and distant trumpets carry you to this era. The life of a medieval knight was inextricably linked to warfare. From a young age, noble boys were trained rigorously in swordsmanship, horsemanship, and strategy. They learned to wield heavy, unforgiving swords, endure long, exhausting marches in full, burdensome armor, and fight with unwavering bravery against fearsome odds. Their very existence was defined by absolute loyalty to their lord, their king, and above all, their Christian faith. The battlefield was their ultimate proving ground, a crucible where honor was desperately won or irrevocably lost, and death was a constant, ever-present companion, lurking in every skirmish. Imagine the deafening clash of steel against steel, the guttural shouts of men, the piercing screams of horses, and the raw scent of blood and fear mingling with dust on the wind. For a knight, surviving a battle was a testament to his formidable skill, his unyielding resolve, and often God's direct favor, dying bravely in combat. A revered path to eternal glory and a place in legendary songs. These formidable warriors lived with the constant, chilling threat of grievous injury or swift death. This stark, brutal reality often intensified their desires for a life's fleeting pleasures, including deep companionship and physical intimacy, which offered a brief respite from the ever-present danger. Yet, their deeply ingrained code of chivalry placed immense, often paradoxical, restrictions on their romantic and intimate lives. A true knight was expected to embody an ideal. He was to be honorable, courageous, loyal, devout, and fiercely protective of the innocent, especially women. While they might engage in courtly love, an idealized, often platonic devotion to a noble, typically married lady. As discussed earlier, their actual marriages were almost invariably arranged for paramount, political or economic gain, much like those of their noble counterparts. Love, if it came at all in these unions, was a fortunate and unexpected byproduct, a rare and precious gift, never a starting point for their marital bonds. Consider a formidable knight, Sir Callan, returning from a long, arduous campaign in a distant land. His burnished armor is now dented and scratched, his powerful body weary and scarred, but his eyes still hold the fierce and tamed glow of a warrior who has survived unimaginable horrors. He's greeted not by a loving embrace born of personal choice, but by a wife chosen for him years ago, whom he barely knows. A primary, undisputed role is to manage his vast estates with efficiency and to bear him legitimate, healthy heirs, ensuring the continuation of his noble line. Their relationship is typically one of duty, mutual respect forged through shared responsibilities, and perhaps a quiet, unspoken affection that grows over time. But it is rarely, if ever, the passionate, all-consuming love sung by the traveling troubadours. Yet, beneath the stoic surface, both knight and lady often yearned for a genuine emotional connection, for moments of unexpected tenderness in a world that demanded harshness and stoicism. This unspoken, often unfulfilled, desire often led to different, sometimes forbidden, avenues of intimacy, tournaments, those grand, vibrant spectacles of skill and pageantry, were far more than just mock battles. They were vital social events, cultural touchstones where knights could display their prowess, gain renown, and most importantly, catch the discerning eye of noble ladies from rival houses. These events served as a controlled outlet for the knight's inherent warrior instincts and provided a magnificent stage for elaborate, stylized displays of courtly love. A knight might dedicate his every powerful thrust and parry to a specific lady, wearing her colors ribbon, a scarf or a precious token from her a glove, a jewel into the fray, hoping to win her public favor, or at least widespread recognition for his devotion. The thunderous cheers of the assembled crowd, the vibrant flutter of colorful banners, the piercing fanfare of trumpets, and the ground-shaking thunder of charging horses, all fueled a palpable sense of romantic drama that often delicately masked the pragmatic, often cold realities of noble marriages and dynastic alliances. Imagine the electrifying tension as two armored knights, perhaps on magnificent steeds, charge each other across the lists, heavy lances perfectly poised for impact. The crowd roars as they collide, a splintering crash of wood and metal. But beneath this dazzling show, these tournaments also served a darker, more practical purpose. They allowed knights to continually hone their combat skills, keeping them sharp and prepared for the brutal realities of actual warfare. And sometimes, these mock battles turned deadly serious, with accidental or intentional fatalities. For the women watching from the stands, arrayed in their finest gowns, these events were a thrilling, yet simultaneously terrifying reminder of the ever-present danger faced by the men they were bound to by law or by blood. Their silent prayers mingled with the cheers. Despite the Church's incredibly strictures against extramarital relations and any form of impure lust, the sophisticated concept of fine amour or courtly love often blurred the lines between spiritual admiration and physical desire, while ideally remaining purely platonic. The intense emotional and spiritual devotion cultivated between a knight and his lady could, and frequently did, spill over into forbidden physical intimacy. Such illicit affairs were incredibly risky, carrying severe penalties if discovered, ranging from irreversible social ruin and public shaming to brutal physical punishment or even death, depending on the status of those involved and the severity of the transgression. Yet, human passion, ever resilient and defiant, found ways to bloom in the deepest shadows. The dangerous allure of a forbidden touch, a stolen kiss in a moonlit garden, a shared secret glance across a crowded hall all added a thrilling, almost addictive danger to lives often dictated rigidly by duty, honor, and strict societal expectations. For knights, particularly those engaged in long, arduous military campaigns far from their ranged wives, or those stationed in remote garrisons for extended periods, temptation was an ever-present companion. Some might seek fleeting solace and physical release in the brothels we discussed earlier, places where the rigid moral rules were temporarily suspended, offering a brief, anonymous escape. Others might form quiet, secret relationships with women from low social strata, chambermaids, village women, or even camp followers' unions that offered companionship and physical comfort without the complex political entanglements and severe consequences associated with affairs involving noble ladies. These were rare, fleeting moments of personal choice, desperate flashes of desire and intimacy in a life rigidly structured by honor, obligation, and constant peril. The relationship between knights and women was a complex, multifaceted tapestry woven with threads of duty, idealized love, and spoken yearning and forbidden desire. Women, whether they were noble ladies inspiring great deeds from their castle walls or common folk toiling in the fields, often served as powerful symbols of inspiration for knights their virtue, and beauty-driving acts of courage and feats of arms. Yet, they were also, fundamentally, subjects of a deeply patriarchal society, their lives largely determined by the men around them fathers, husbands, brothers, and lords. Their true power lay not in overt control, but in their subtle influence, their ability to inspire, to offer solace, and sometimes in their quiet, defiant pursuit of personal happiness or forbidden love, even in the face of overwhelming societal pressure. As we reflect on these brave, yet profoundly human, figures of the Middle Ages, we see that even in a world dominated by steel, strict social hierarchy, and unyielding religious dogma, the timeless search for a genuine connection, deep intimacy, and a touch of tenderness remained the constant, powerful force. Their lives were a testament to the enduring, resilient human spirit, finding love and meaning in the most unlikely, often challenging, of circumstances. Allow these thoughts to settle gently, like the quiet closing of a heavy castle gate in your mind. The sounds of medieval life, the clash of swords, the rustle of silken gowns, the whispers of secret loves, are now slowly fading into the serene quietude. Breathe deeply and evenly, letting go of any remaining tension in your body and mind. The Middle Ages, with all its intricate complexities, its profound contradictions, its unwavering courage, and its deeply hidden passions, is now calmly drifting into the quiet, welcoming corners of your consciousness, leading you towards a peaceful rest. As the echoes of knights and their battles fade, let us now turn our gaze to the often overlooked yet profoundly significant figures of the Middle Ages, women, their lives. Though often confined by strict societal norms and religious doctrines, were rich with purpose, unwavering struggle and quiet, enduring resilience, beyond romanticized notions. Medieval women played multifaceted and crucial roles fundamental to society's survival. Tonight, we'll gently pull back the veil of time, exploring their daily realities, hidden strengths, and powerful influences across different social strata. Close your eyes. Breathe softly and deeply, and let the quiet, steady rhythm of their lives guide you into deeper understanding. The life of a medieval woman was largely defined by her social standing. For noble women, life unfolded within castle walls, a world of intricate etiquette, religious devotion, and immense responsibility, while they rarely wielded a sword. Their power lay in managing vast estates, overseeing hundreds of household staff, and often defending castles in their lord's or husband's absence. Their days were filled with supervising everything from baking and brewing to weaving and childcare. Many were surprisingly well educated, learning to read, write, and manage complex financial and legal documents, skills essential for running large aristocratic households. Imagine yourself, Lady Eleanor, a noble woman. You rise before dawn for prayer and endless castle tasks. The chill of ancient stone permeates the air. Your day is a whirlwind of instructions, ensuring the cook has food, checking on seamstresses, perhaps tending a sick servant. Your husband is often away, leaving you as the undisputed ruler of the castle and lands. You pore over ledgers, ensuring harvests are accounted for, taxes collected, and defenses maintained. When rumors of raiders spread, you organize the guard, preparing for a siege, your heart a fortress of calm resolve. Your duty was a strategic, demanding, and vital rule for your family's survival and standing in a volatile world. Marriage, for noble women, was almost never a choice of the heart. It was a political and economic necessity. Daughters were bargaining chips in dynastic alliances. Their dowries determining their value, their primary role was to produce male heirs to ensure family line continuation and inheritance. Childbirth was incredibly perilous, often ending in death from mother or child. Despite this terrifying reality, they persevered with courage, understanding their irreplaceable role in shaping their lineage's future. Now, let's turn to peasant women, who constituted the vast majority of female population. Their lives were dictated not by courtly intrigue, but by the relentless rhythms of the land and the grueling demands of survival. Unlike noble women, their days weren't supervising others, but involved relentless, back-breaking physical labor from sunup to sundown. They worked tirelessly alongside husbands and children in fields, sowing seeds, harvesting crops, and tending livestock. Their hands were rough, faces weathered. Imagine being Agnes, a peasant woman in a small village. You wake to the first sliver of light. Your first task is to milk the cow, fingers numb from cold. Then, it's off to communal fields with your husband and children, working the stubborn soil until every muscle aches. You stop briefly for a meager meal cooked over a smoky fire. Evenings are spent spinning wool, mending clothes, or grinding grain by half-light. There's almost no true rest, only changing tasks. Your contributions were absolutely fundamental and indispensable to the family's existence, a true partnership forged in shared hardship. For peasant women, marriage was overwhelmingly practical, often formalized earlier due to the immediate necessity of building a strong, working family unit. Formal education was almost non-existent. But they possessed invaluable practical knowledge passed down: herbal medicine, food preservation, animal husbandry, and childcare. Their strong, resilient bodies were their primary tools, and their unwavering resilience was the bedrock of rural medieval life, ensuring family and community survival. Beyond these demanding rules, medieval women faced pervasive societal pressures dictated by custom and faith, the Church, while elevating the Virgin Mary as ideal, simultaneously placed incredibly strict moral guidelines on real women. Chastity and modesty were paramount virtues. Any perceived deviation, even a rumor, could lead to severe social ostracism, public shaming, or harsh physical punishment. Women were often seen through the narrow, dualistic lens of either Eve or Mary, leaving little room for the complexities of real human experience. Despite these significant constraints and the deeply patriarchal nature of medieval society, women often found remarkable ways to exert influence and find agency. Some women, particularly widows who inherited property, gained considerable independence, managing their own property, overseeing businesses, or acting as formidable landowners. In bustling urban centers, women worked actively as skilled artisans, true merchants. or successful innkeepers, contributing significantly to the urban economy. Religious life also offered an alternative path. Women could become nuns, finding intellectual stimulation, spiritual fulfillment, and a supportive sisterhood outside marriage and domesticity. These convents were often vibrant centers of learning and artistic creation, where their voices, though quiet to the outside world, resonated with purpose and intellect. Consider yourself walking through a vibrant medieval town square. You observe women confidently selling bread and vegetables in the market, their voices loud, haggling over prices. Further down, a master weaver meticulously works her loom, creating stunning tapestries. As you pass a quiet convent, you hear the soft chants of nuns, dedicating lives to prayer, scholarship, and serving the poor, forging a sisterhood providing sanctuary and profound purpose. These quiet, yet powerful, acts of resilience, relentless labor, and unwavering faith paint a far richer, more nuanced, and ultimately more accurate picture of women's lives in the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages was undoubtedly a deeply patriarchal society. Yet the contributions of women were absolutely indispensable to its functioning and survival. Their physical labor sustained communities, administrative skills competently managed estates, and emotional strength held families together. Their stories, though less often recorded, are nevertheless woven intricately into the very fabric of history, echoing through time if one only listens closely enough. Allow these insights into the rich, complex, and often challenging lives of medieval women to settle gently in your mind. The sounds of their daily toil, their quiet prayers, their hidden struggles, and their unspoken strengths are now slowly fading into a peaceful, comforting hum. Breathe deeply and evenly, letting go of any remaining tension in your body and mind. The Middle Ages, with its resilient, powerful, and often overlooked women, is now calmly drifting into the welcoming corners of your consciousness, leading you towards a deep and tranquil rest. As we've explored the complexities of medieval marriage, courtly love, and the Church's pervasive influence, let's now delve deeper into the intricate web of sexual taboos and the realities of transgression that pulsed beneath the surface of medieval society. Despite stringent moral codes and severe penalties, human desire often found ways to express itself, creating a landscape of hidden relationships, forbidden practices, and often tragic consequences. Tonight, we will uncover some of the more uncomfortable, yet historically significant, truths about sexuality in the Middle Ages, the sins that were whispered, the desires that were suppressed, and the desperate measures people took to navigate a world obsessed with purity, yet rife with human imperfection. Close your eyes, breathe gently, and let the hushed secrets of the past lead you into a deeper, more nuanced understanding of this challenging era. The Church's teaching on sexuality was unequivocally clear. Sex was primarily for procreation, and any act outside this purpose was sinful. This doctrine created a vast landscape of taboos, far broader than what many in modern society might imagine. Oral sex, anal sex, masturbation, and even certain marital positions were all condemned as unnatural or sodomitical acts, deemed offenses against God's natural order. The meticulous penitential handbooks used by priests to guide confessions detail these prohibitions with excruciating specificity, often assigning severe penances for even seemingly minor deviations from the prescribed marital act. This constant scrutiny bred an pervasive sense of guilt and fear, forcing many to lead lives of outward conformity while harboring secret desires and hidden acts. Imagine a confessional booth, dark, hushed, the air heavy with unspoken burdens. You kneel, heart pounding, as the priest's voice, marveled by the screen, asks probing questions not just about your deeds, but your very thoughts, every forbidden touch, every impure desire, every act outside the strictures of procreation must be revealed. The weight of potential damnation presses down. The penance, perhaps days of fasting, countless prayers, or even public humiliation, is a stark reminder of the Church's immense power over both body and soul. This was the constant internal struggle faced by countless medieval individuals, caught between natural human urges and the crushing weight of divine condemnation, incest, defined broadly by the Church to include distant relatives and even spiritual kin like godparents, was a particularly heinous sin, carrying extreme penalties. Marriages could be annulled on grounds of distant kinship, rendering children illegitimate and stripping families of their social standing. This broad definition often served political ends, allowing powerful families to dissolve inconvenient alliances. Similarly, adultery, especially by women, carried immense social and moral stigma. For a man, it could be a matter of social standing or inheritance, but for a woman, it was a profound violation of her husband's property rights and threatened the legitimacy of his, often leading to public shaming, banishment, or even death in some regions. The fear of discovery permeated every secret liaison, making such relationships fraught with immense danger and profound anxiety. Consider a small, close-knit medieval village. Whispers travel fast. If a woman was suspected of adultery, the community itself would often become the enforcer of morality. She might be publicly shamed, her head shaved, forced to wear a mark of her transgression, or even paraded through the streets. Her reputation, and that of her entire family, would be irrevocably ruined. This communal enforcement of sexual morality was a powerful deterrent, often more immediate and terrifying than the threat of hellfire. It highlights how deeply ingrained these taboos were within the very fabric of daily life. Not just abstract church doctrines. Homosexuality, often referred to as sodomy in medieval texts, was condemned as one of the gravest sins, considered an act against nature. The penalties were horrific, ranging from imprisonment and torture to execution, often by burning at the stake. Despite this extreme persecution, historical records, though sparse and often biased, indicate that same-sex relationships and desires did exist, particularly in urban centers, within monastic communities, or among certain artistic and intellectual circles where discretion was possible. These relationships were necessarily clandestine, lived in constant fear of exposure and the brutal consequences. Imagine the profound isolation of an individual in the Middle Ages harboring same-sex desires. There was no open discourse, no acceptance, only condemnation and the threat of unspeakable violence. Every interaction, every glance, every unspoken longing would be fraught with immense personal risk. To be discovered meant not just social ruin, but likely a horrific death. Yet, the persistence of these desires, even under such extreme duress, speaks to the enduring and undeniable diversity of human sexuality, even when brutally suppressed. It paints a picture of immense personal struggle and hidden lives, often ending in tragedy, prostitution, as discussed previously, presents a fascinating paradox within this moral landscape. While universally condemned by the Church as a sin, it was often pragmatically tolerated and even regulated by secular authorities in many medieval towns and cities. Brothels were often confined to specific, designated red light districts, sometimes even taxed by local councils. This institutional hypocrisy rose from the recognition that a complete suppression of sexual urges was unrealistic and that regulated prostitution might prevent greater social disorder, such as rape or other illicit acts against virtuous women. Imagine walking through a medieval city's designated red light district. It's distinct, perhaps marked by a specific sign or the louder, coarser laughter emanating from certain doorways. While the church preached eternal damnation for those within, the city officials saw an opportunity to control and profit for the men who frequented these establishments. It offered a temporary release from moral strictures for the women working there, often from the poorest strata of society. It was a brutal, short, and desperate path to survival, marked by disease, violence, and social exclusion, yet offering a stark glimpse into the pragmatic realities of human needs versus rigid dogma. Rape was, of course, a heinous crime in the Middle Ages, though its legal definition and the consequences for perpetrators varied wildly depending on the social status of the victim and the accused. For women, proving rape was incredibly difficult. Their testimony was often viewed with suspicion, and the burden of proof was overwhelmingly on the victim, a woman's reputation, if she claimed rape, could be irrevocably damaged, and she might face ostracism even if her claim was true. Punishment for the accused, if found guilty, could range from financial penalties to imprisonment or, rarely, death. But the emphasis was often on compensating the victim's male guardian, father or husband, for the damage to his property or honor, rather than on the profound trauma inflicted upon the woman herself. This systemic bias highlights the deeply ingrained patriarchal nature of medieval law and society. Finally, the concept of sexual privacy, as we understand it today, was almost non-existent. Homes were often small, crowded, and lacked distinct private spaces. Peasant families, and even larger households in castles, frequently slept in communal rooms or open halls. Personal boundaries were fluid, and a sense of individual secluded intimacy was a luxury rarely afforded to anyone, regardless of social status. This constant lack of physical privacy meant that couples, even within the confines of marriage, had to find moments of intimacy discreetly, often in silence, navigating the shared spaces with an unspoken understanding of communal living. This pervasive lack of privacy undoubtedly shaped how people understood and experienced their own bodies and desires, reinforcing the idea that sexuality was not just a personal matter, but one constantly subject to communal observation and moral judgment. As you reflect on these complex and often challenging realities of medieval sexuality and privacy, consider the profound resilience of the human spirit to navigate such a restrictive world. Despite the Church's pervasive control, the threat of social ruin, and the lack of personal space, human desires, relationships, and the search for intimacy persisted in countless forms, some celebrated, many hidden, and others brutally suppressed. These stories are a powerful reminder of the enduring tension between societal rules and the undeniable realities of human nature. Allow these insights to settle gently in your mind, like the soft echoes in ancient, quiet chambers, the whispers of medieval taboos, the struggles for intimacy. and the quiet acts of rebellion are now slowly fading into a peaceful, comforting hum. Breathe deeply and evenly, letting go of any remaining tension in your body and mind. The Middle Ages, with all its intricate challenges and the enduring spirit of its people, is now calmly drifting into the welcoming corners of your consciousness, leading you towards a deep and tranquil rest. As we've explored the social structures, hidden desires, and physical realities of medieval life, let's now turn to the profound and often more emotional landscapes of the Middle Ages. Beyond the rigid codes and practical necessities, human hearts beat with universal feelings, love, grief, joy, and despair. How did people experience these deep emotions in a world so different from our own, shaped by pervasive faith, constant threat, and tightly knit communities? Tonight, we will delve into the joys of medieval courtship, the agony of loss, and the unique ways people expressed their deepest feelings, often through religious devotion, communal rituals, and the fragile art of spoken word. Close your eyes, breathe gently, and let the whispers of ancient sorrows and quiet joys guide you through the emotional heart of this era. Love in the Middle Ages was a multifaceted concept, often starkly different from modern romantic ideals. For the vast majority, as we've discussed, marriage was a practical, ranged affair, especially among the nobility. Yet, even within these structured unions, genuine affection, respect, and deep companionship could, and often did, blossom over time. A shared life of labor, mutual dependence, and the raising of children often forged bonds stronger than any initial romantic spark. For peasants, working side by side in the fields, enduring hardships together, and facing the constant struggle for survival created a powerful, unspoken solidarity that was its own form of love, resilient, enduring, and deeply rooted in shared reality. However, the ideal of courtly love, though often platonic, offered an emotional outlet for the nobility. This idealized admiration, expressed through poetry, songs, and chivalric deeds, allowed for an emotional intensity that formal marriages often lacked. Imagine a knight composing a lyrical poem to his unattainable lady, pouring out his soul in verses of devotion and yearning. This was a sophisticated emotional game, often played out publicly in tournaments and courtly gatherings, yet its core was a powerful, if sometimes unfulfilled, emotional connection. These platonic bonds could provide solace and inspiration, enriching lives that might otherwise be defined solely by duty and obligation. Yet, alongside these structured and idealized forms of affection, the Middle Ages also witnessed profound examples of passionate, sometimes illicit, romantic love. Secret trysts, stolen glances, and clandestine meetings were the realm of lovers defying societal norms and church prohibitions. Such relationships, while fraught with immense danger and the threat of severe punishment, speak to the enduring power of human desire to transcend boundaries. Imagine the thrilling terror of a couple meeting under the cover of darkness, their hearts pounding not just with passion, out with the fear of discovery. These hidden loves, though rarely recorded in official histories, formed a vibrant, emotional undercurrent, proving that even in the most restrictive times, the human heart sought connection beyond prescribed rules. Grief and loss were constant companions in the Middle Ages. High mortality rates meant that death was an ever-present reality, touching every family, often multiple times. The loss of children, siblings, spouses, and parents was a common, harrowing experience, infant mortality was particularly devastating, with a significant percentage of children not surviving beyond their first few years. This constant exposure to death, while perhaps hardening some to its inevitability, also deepened religious faith and intensified the emotional bonds forged in life. Funerals were communal affairs, deeply rooted in religious ritual, providing a framework for public mourning and offering hope for salvation in the afterlife. Imagine a village family huddled round a small, still body, perhaps an infant who succumbed to fever. The silence in the humble hut is heavy, broken only by quiet sobs. The parents' grief is raw and varnished, yet their faith provides a fragile comfort. They believe their child is now with God. Free from earthly suffering, the entire community gathers for the funeral procession, singing solemn hymns, offering prayers, and providing practical support to the bereaved. This shared experience of loss and communal mourning helped individuals navigate their profound grief, reinforcing the bonds that held society together in the face of constant fragility. The emotional experience of loss was often filtered through the lens of religious belief. Death was not merely an end, but a transition, a journey of the soul towards salvation or damnation. This belief offered both solace and profound fear. Prayers for the dead, masses for their souls, and pilgrimages performed in their memory were vital emotional expressions, believed to aid the departed in their journey through purgatory to heaven. This spiritual framework provided a powerful coping mechanism, allowing individuals to process immense grief by channeling it into acts of devotion and hope for reunion in the afterlife. Joy and celebration in the Middle Ages, though often punctuated by hardship, were deeply felt and communally expressed. Festivals, feast days, religious holidays, and local celebrations provided much-needed respite from daily toil. These events were vibrant explosions of color, sound, and communal revelry, often involving dancing, music, storytelling, and copious amounts of food and drink. Marriages, births, successful harvests, and victories in battle were all occasions for a collective rejoicing, cementing social bonds and offering release from life's pressures. Imagine a bustling village fair during a harvest festival. The air is alive with the sound of bagpipes and laughter. Villagers, dressed in their best, dance in circles, their faces flushed with exertion and joy. Children chase each other, shrieking with delight, while adults share tankards of ale and platters of roasted meat. Storytellers captivate audiences with tales of heroic knights and mischievous fairies. For a brief period, the harsh realities of life fade, replaced by a profound sense of communal happiness and shared celebration. These moments of collective joy were essential for emotional well-being, providing a vital counterpoint to the ever-present struggles. Emotional expression in the Middle Ages was often more restrained and communal than modern individualistic displays. Public displays of intense personal emotion, particularly for men, might be seen as a sign of weakness, yet emotions found their outlets in various forms. Religious art and hymns were powerful vehicles for expressing devotion, sorrow, and spiritual yearning. Lamentations in poetry and song articulated grief and loss, often imbued with a sense of fatalism and reliance on divine will. The architecture of cathedrals, with their soaring arches and stained glass narratives, was designed to evoke reverence and spiritual contemplation. Consider the intricate carvings on a cathedral portal depicting scenes of suffering saints, or the joyous resurrection, These visual narratives were intended to provoke strong emotional responses in the illiterate populace, guiding their feelings towards faith and piety. Or listen to the haunting melody of a Gregorian chant echoing through a stone nave, its simplicity and solemnity designed to evoke a sense of spiritual yearning and peace. Emotions were often expressed through shared ritual, collective prayer, and communal experiences, binding individuals together in a shared emotional landscape. Guided by the omnipresent influence of the Church, despite the prevailing Stoicism, and the emphasis on duty over personal feeling, medieval individuals experienced the full spectrum of human emotions. Their letters, though rare, sometimes revealed tender affection and deep longing. Their wills often contained poignant bequests to loved ones, reflecting enduring attachment. Even the strictures of confession offered a unique space for emotional release, allowing individuals to articulate their fears, guilt, and hopes in a private, if highly formalized, setting. The emotional lives of medieval people were not less complex than ours, merely expressed and understood within a vastly different cultural and religious framework. As we've journeyed through the complexities of medieval society, from the grand castles to the humble peasant homes, and from intimate relationships to profound grief, let's now turn our attention to one of the most defining aspects of the Middle Ages, the omnipresent and immensely powerful influence of the Church, particularly as experienced within monastic life for many. Joining a monastery or convent was an ultimate act of spiritual devotion, a literal withdrawal from the secular world to pursue a life of purity, prayer, and scholarly work. Yet, even within these sacred walls, human nature, with all its inherent desires and complexities, often found ways to challenge the most stringent rules of celibacy and communal living. Tonight, we will explore the ideals, the realities, and the often hidden contradictions of spiritual and sensual life within the cloisters of medieval monasteries and convents. Close your eyes, breathe gently, and let the echoes of ancient chants and whispered confessions guide you through this fascinating, often paradoxical world. The ideal of monastic life was one of absolute dedication to God. Monks and nuns committed themselves to vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, forsaking worldly possessions, physical pleasures, and individual will. Their days were rigidly structured around prayer, contemplation, manual labor, and study. Monasteries and convents were not just spiritual centers. They were also vital hubs of learning, preserving ancient texts, producing illuminated manuscripts, and sometimes serving as hospitals or places of refuge. For many, entering the cloister offered a pathway to salvation, a disciplined existence free from the temptations and chaos of the outside world, and an opportunity for intellectual pursuits that might otherwise be unavailable. Imagine a young man, perhaps named Brother Thomas, entering a Benedictine monastery. He sheds his earthly clothes, exchanges them for a simple, coarse habit. His head is shaved, a symbol of his renunciation of the world. His days begin before dawn, with chanting in the cold, cavernous chapel. He spends hours copying Latin texts. In the scriptorium, his fingers numb with cold, his eyes strained by candlelight. Meals are taken in silence, each monk focused solely on spiritual nourishment. He kneels for countless hours in prayer, his body aching, his mind striving for divine connection. This was the disciplined, austere ideal, a life entirely devoted to God, a constant striving for spiritual perfection through denial of the flesh, however. The reality of monastic life was often far more complex and human than the idealized image. Despite stringent vows of celibacy, human desire, attraction, and even love were powerful forces that could not always be suppressed. Records from the period, including papal decrees, episcopal visitations, and monastic chronicles, contain numerous instances of monks and nuns breaking their vows. These transgressions ranged from discreet, consensual relationships within the cloister or with outsiders, to the secret raising of children, and even more scandalous affairs that sometimes involved the leadership of the monastic houses. The Church constantly fought against these lapses, imposing harsh penances and punishments. But the very frequency of these warnings suggests that such human frailties were far from uncommon. Imagine a nun, Sister Agnes, her heart secretly yearning for a life beyond the convent walls, or perhaps for the forbidden companionship of a fellow sister, or even a priest visiting the monastery. The weight of her vows presses down on her, yet her human desires persist. A quiet, persistent hum beneath the surface of her disciplined existence. Perhaps she exchanges secret glances during common prayer, a fleeting touch as they pass in the cloister garden, or whispered words in the dimly lit scriptorium late at night. The risk of discovery is immense. Public humiliation, excommunication, or confinement in isolation, yet the human need for a connection, for a touch, for emotional intimacy, sometimes overrides the fear of eternal damnation. These were the hidden struggles within the sacred walls, a testament to the enduring power of human nature against the most rigid of rules, the vow of poverty. While intended to free monks and nuns from worldly attachments, also faced challenges. While communities as a whole might be wealthy due to endowments and land holdings, individual monks and nuns were supposed to own nothing. Yet, personal possessions, small comforts, and even hidden caches of money were not unheard of. Some monastic houses, particularly those with vast lands and political influence, became incredibly wealthy, leading to accusations of corruption and a departure from their ascetic ideals. This economic reality often created a tension between spiritual aspiration and worldly comforts, drawing scrutiny from reform movements within the church. Imagine a powerful abbot. His robes made of fine wool, his table laden with delicacies, a stark contrast to the humble meals his monastic rule dictates for the common monks. He manages vast tracts of land, employs numerous peasants, and engages in complex political negotiations with local lords and bishops. While he may technically own nothing personally, his lifestyle reflects immense wealth and power, a deviation from the ascetic poverty preached by the founders of his order. This hypocrisy, real or perceived, was a constant source of tension and a frequent target of reformers who sought to bring monastic life back to its foundational principles. Obedience to the abbot or abbess was another cornerstone of monastic life. Yet even this strong hierarchical structure could be undermined by human ambition, rivalries, and dissent. Internal conflicts, power struggles, and even open defiance were not uncommon, as individuals vied for influence or chafed under strict leadership. These internal dynamics often reflected the political and social tensions of the broader medieval world, demonstrating that even cloistered communities were not immune to human complexities. Beyond internal struggles, monastic life also faced external pressures. The Black Death, for instance, devastated monastic communities, often wiping out entire populations within a single monastery, leading to a breakdown of discipline and a desperate struggle for survival. Wars and local conflicts also impacted monasteries, as they were often targets for plunder or used as fortifications. The very wealth of some houses made them attractive targets for secular rulers who sought to exploit their resources. These external challenges further complicated the pursuit of a pure monastic ideal, forcing communities to adapt and sometimes compromise their rigid rules. Despite these contradictions and challenges, monasteries and convents remained immensely influential institutions throughout the Middle Ages. They served as beacons of literacy and learning in an age of widespread illiteracy, preserving classical knowledge and contributing to theological and philosophical thought. They provided charitable services, cared for the sick, and offered spiritual guidance to the wider population. The very existence of these institutions and the continued flow of individuals seeking a life of spiritual devotion speaks to the profound religious fervor that characterized the medieval era, even if the human element often added layers of complexity to the idealized vision. The tension between the spiritual ideal and the human reality was a defining characteristic of monastic life. It showcased the perennial struggle between rigid doctrine and the undeniable force of human nature, its desires, its frailties, and its enduring search for a connection. Even in the most unexpected of places, this ongoing dynamic paints a far richer and more nuanced picture of medieval religious life than a simple, one-dimensional view of pious devotion. As we've navigated the structured world of medieval marriage, the subtle art of courtly love, and even the hidden struggles within monastic life, let's now pull back the veil further and explore the less talked about, often condemned, yet undeniably present aspects of sexuality in the Middle Ages. Beyond the sanctioned unions and the public condemnations, human desire, in its myriad forms, sought expression. Tonight, we delve into unconventional sexualities, the realities of prostitution beyond simple toleration, the complex and often brutal world of sexual violence, and the societal responses to these realities that existed on the margins of medieval life. Close your eyes, breathe gently, and let the hushed secrets and stark realities of these often overlooked corners of the past guide you. The Church's unwavering doctrine on sexuality, as we know, permitted sex solely for procreation within the confines of marriage. This rigid stance, however, created a vast category of unconventional sexualities, any form of sexual expression that deviated from this narrow path. This included, but was not limited to, same-sex relations, non-procreative heterosexual acts, and sexual activities outside the sacred marital bond for the medieval mind. These were not merely moral failings, but grave sins, often deemed unnatural and threatening to the divine order. The penalties for such transgressions were severe, ranging from spiritual penance to public shaming, mutilation, and even death. Imagine a village where rumors circulate about to men or to women sharing an intimate bond. The fear of discovery would be constant, a suffocating blanket over their lives. Every shared glance, every lingering touch, every whispered word of affection would be fraught with immense danger. If discovered, they faced not just social ostracism, but potential imprisonment, torture, or even execution. Confessors were specifically trained to identify and extract confessions of such sins, leading to widespread anxiety and a deep sense of internal conflict for those whose desires did not align with church teachings. This created a profound sense of isolation and required extraordinary courage to live an authentic, albeit hidden, life. Prostitution, while officially condemned, was an undeniable and pervasive feature of medieval urban life, representing a complex paradox of moral prohibition and pragmatic reality. Far from being entirely suppressed, it was often tolerated, regulated, and even taxed by secular authorities. Many towns designated specific areas often known as stews or brothel quarters, where prostitutes were permitted to operate. This pragmatic approach stemmed from the belief that regulated prostitution could help prevent more egregious sexual sins, such as rape, or deter men from pursuing virtuous women. It was seen as a necessary evil, a pressure valve for male sexual urges. Picture a bustling medieval city at dusk. As the sun dips below the rooftops, a particular district comes alive. Lanterns cast a warm glow on painted signs, and the sound of music and louder chatter spills from open doors. Women with brightly colored dresses and elaborate headdresses beckon from windows. This was the red light district, a designated space where societal rules were temporarily bent. For the men who frequented these establishments, it offered a brief, anonymous escape from moral rigidity. For the women working there, often from the poorest strata of society, life was brutal and short. They faced disease, violence, exploitation, and social stigma. Their existence, though marginalized, highlights the stark reality that even in a deeply religious society, human needs and the complexities of urban life created spaces where sin was commercially traded. Sexual violence, particularly rape, was a grim reality in the Middle Ages. While legally condemned, the application of justice was often deeply flawed and heavily biased against the victim. A woman's testimony was frequently viewed with suspicion, and the burden of proof was overwhelmingly placed upon her. The legal system often prioritized the honor or property rights of the victim's male guardian, her father or husband, over the profound physical and psychological trauma inflicted upon the woman herself. Punishments for perpetrators, if found guilty, varied widely based on their social status and the severity of the act, ranging from fines to imprisonment, or, in rarer cases, execution. Consider the immense courage it would take for a medieval woman to accuse a powerful man of rape. She would face intense public scrutiny, skeptical judges, and the potential for her own reputation to be ruined. Regardless of the truth, her story might be dismissed, her virtue questioned. The lack of understanding regarding consent, combined with a patriarchal legal system, meant that justice for rape victims was tragically elusive for many. This dark aspect of medieval society underscores the vulnerability of women and the pervasive power imbalances that shape their lives. Beyond institutionalized prostitution and the grim reality of sexual violence, other forms of deviant or forbidden sexual behaviors were present, albeit hidden. Sources like penitential handbooks and court records reveal concerns about masturbation, bestiality, and sexual acts deemed blasphemous or involving magic. These were seen as not just moral failings, but often as signs of demonic influence or grave heresy. Confessors were trained to interrogate individuals about these acts, and public confessions or punishments could follow. The medieval approach to these unconventional or illicit sexualities was primarily one of suppression and moral condemnation. The dominant narrative, driven by the church, was that such acts were sins against God, against nature, and against the established social order. However, the very existence of detailed prohibitions, moral condemnations, and records of transgressions reveals a fascinating and often contradictory truth that human sexual diversity and desire, in all its forms, was a persistent, undeniable force even in the face of overwhelming societal and religious pressure. These hidden currents underscore the resilience of human nature to seek connection, pleasure, and expression, even in the deepest shadows of social and religious restriction. The medieval world, while outwardly devout and rigidly structured, was also a place where the full spectrum of human sexuality played out, often in secret, sometimes with devastating consequences. Understanding these hidden dimensions provides a more complete and nuanced picture of the era, revealing that the human heart, with all its desires and complexities, remains remarkably constant across the centuries, adapting and finding ways to express itself even under the most extreme forms of control and moral judgment. We've journeyed deep into the heart of the Middle Ages, exploring its formal marriages, whispered courtly loves, hidden desires, the complex lives of women, the struggles within monastic walls, and the often brutal realities of unconventional sexualities. As our journey through medieval intimacy draws to a close, let's reflect on the enduring legacy of these historical perspectives and how they continue to resonate or starkly contrast with our modern understanding of sexuality and privacy. Tonight, we'll cast a final gaze over the medieval understanding of the body, desire, and the boundaries of intimacy, offering a concluding reflection on how this distant past shaped and continues to inform the present. Close your eyes, breathe gently, and let the echoes of centuries past invite a final contemplation. The most profound legacy of medieval sexuality lies in the dominant role of the Church. For over 1,000 years, the Church exerted unparalleled moral and social authority, shaping perceptions of the human body, desire, and marital relations, its emphasis on procreation as the sole legitimate purpose of sex, its condemnation of unnatural acts, and its rigid control over marital dissolution, created a framework that permeated every layer of society. This pervasive influence led to a culture where sin, guilt, and divine judgment were ever-present considerations in matters of intimacy. Think about the lasting impact of this period. Even in largely secular societies today, remnants of these medieval attitudes persist in subtle ways, from lingering taboos around certain sexual practices to societal judgments on non-traditional relationships. The idea that certain sexual acts are inherently wrong or unnatural has deep roots in medieval theological thought. While modern society has largely moved away from the extreme punishments and public shaming, the undercurrent of moral scrutiny often remains, showcasing how profoundly the medieval church shaped Western sexual ethics. The medieval era's approach to privacy and intimacy was remarkably different from our own personal space, as we understand it, was a luxury rarely afforded. Crowded homes, communal sleeping arrangements, and the lack of distinct private rooms meant that intimate moments, even between married couples, often occurred in semi-public or shared spaces. This necessitated a form of discretion and a societal acceptance of limited privacy, a stark contrast to the modern emphasis on private bedrooms and individual sexual autonomy. Imagine the sheer normalcy of a medieval couple finding intimacy in a small, shared hut, perhaps with children or other family members sleeping nearby. Their intimacy was not about secluded privacy, but about shared humanity and the quiet moments stolen within a communal existence. This historical reality challenges our contemporary notions of what privacy truly means in a sexual context, highlighting that privacy is not a universal constant, but a culturally and historically constructed concept. The medieval lack of physical privacy likely contributed to the internal policing of sexual thoughts and actions, as external surveillance was a constant reality. The period also laid foundational, albeit often problematic, concepts of gender and sexuality. Women, while elevated in the figure of the Virgin Mary, were simultaneously viewed through the lens of Eve temptresses, inherently weaker and subject to male authority. Their sexuality was often policed more strictly than men's, due to concerns over lineage, property, and moral purity. Male sexuality, while also subject to sin, was often viewed as a more uncontrollable, natural force that needed outlets. Hence, the pragmatic tolerance of prostitution in many urban centers. Consider how these medieval gendered perceptions still echo today. The double standards applied to male and female sexuality, the pressure on women regarding their virtue, and the societal anxieties surrounding female sexual autonomy all have historical precedents in the Middle Ages. While modern feminism has challenged many of these norms, understanding their deep historical roots in medieval thought provides crucial context for ongoing struggles for gender equality in sexual matters. The concept of sin and transgression profoundly shaped medieval sexual expression. Any deviation from procreative marital sex was a sin, a moral failing punishable by the church and sometimes by secular law. This led to widespread secrecy around forbidden desires and behaviors, forcing many to live double lives of outward conformity and hidden transgression. This constant fear of discovery and divine retribution undoubtedly stifled open expression and forced intimate desires into the shadows. Think of the vast number of personal stories lost to history, the unrecorded. Same-sex relationships, the consensual non-procreative acts within marriage, the private explorations of desire. These acts existed, as evidenced by penitential handbooks detailing every conceivable sin, but they were almost never openly acknowledged or celebrated. This legacy of silence and shame surrounding deviant sexualities has had a long, detrimental impact, contributing to societal stigmas that persist even today, though modern movements strive for acceptance and visibility. Finally, the resilience of human desire in the face of overwhelming constraints stands as a powerful testament from the Middle Ages. Despite severe moral codes, lack of privacy, and the constant threat of punishment, people found ways to form intimate bonds, express affection, and pursue sexual pleasure. From the formalized, yet emotionally rich, courtly love to the desperate realities of prostitution and the hidden lives of those with unconventional desires, human sexuality, in all its forms, proved to be an undeniable and enduring force. This resilience reminds us that while societal rules and religious doctrines can shape, restrict, and punish, they rarely completely extinguish the fundamental human need for a connection, intimacy, and the expression of desire. The medieval period, with all its stark contrasts and contradictions, serves as a powerful mirror, reflecting both the historical roots of our current sexual landscape and the timeless, adaptable nature of human sexuality itself. It invites us to consider how far we've come in understanding and accepting the diverse spectrum of human intimacy, while also recognizing the long shadows that medieval beliefs continue to cast on our modern world. Our journey through the intimate secrets of the Middle Ages now concludes. The whispers of ancient lives, their loves, their struggles, and their enduring human spirit will now fade into the quiet